What's up, Brew Bros? I'm Jeff.
I'm Steven.
And today we're going to be doing an intro course on how to brew. We're going to be making a fat tire clone called Flat Tire by Midwest Supplies.
Brew up! Alright, so we bought a kit from Midwest Supplies. It's the Flat Tire Ale kit, as we mentioned. So this is going to have all the ingredients in there. It also has an instruction page right here, which most of them are just pretty generic instructions. That's what we're going to be going through today. First things first, I want to mention you want to make sure that you thoroughly clean everything. So we already cleaned our brew pot over here, our brew kettle. We're going to clean our fermenter. We'll show you guys how to do that. We're going to clean anything that's going to touch the beer or the wort at all. And then the next thing you gotta do is make sure you sanitize everything.
Sanitation.
Yes, so we have Star San here, so we're gonna make a mixture of that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And you're gonna sanitize anything that's gonna touch the wort when you put it into the fermenters.
You get any bacteria in your beer, and then you cap it and it's fermenting for, weeks or months, that's gonna get you sick. You wanna be very careful, make sure everything's sanitary.
So we're just going to fill this, not up to the top, but maybe a few inches away from the top, because when it starts boiling it may get pretty crazy in there, it could boil over. This is going to be a partial boil, so it's about 2 gallons, and then we're going to top it off later, so we're going to have 5 gallons of beer total.
Alright, so now we got our water getting heated up. We're going to bring it to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a good idea to have a thermostat connected up, because if you go too high, you're going to get some tannins in there, and it's not going to taste very good. So while this is getting heated up, we're going to go ahead and get our grains ready in the muslin bag.
It's a good idea to do this over the garbage because a lot of the little grain bits and husks are pretty small and they go right through the bag.
Just give it a couple of shakes and you're going to want to have to tie this off so it doesn't open up while it's in the water. Alright, so now we got our water up to 155 degrees, so we're going to go ahead and put in our bag grains. And you want to just have it kind of sitting up here. It's nice to attach something so that it's easier to pull out once you're done. So we're going to leave this in here for 15 to 30 minutes. You're going to see the color start to change in the water. And once you see a nice, tinted color after about 15 to 30 minutes, then you could go ahead and take it out.
So while we're steeping the grains, I'm actually just going to preheat this extract in this hot water here because it's going to be very thick, like thick maple syrup. But if we dunk it in some very hot water, let it sit there for a few minutes, it's going to be a lot easier to pour. So I was in the process of cleaning this fermenter. This is what we're actually going to put the wort in to ferment after we're all done with everything here. So I like to use this OxyClean. This is OxyClean, just the regular stain removing stuff. And this is the one with no perfumes or dyes or anything like that. Other guys like to use the PBW, the powdered brew wash. That works too. It's just a little bit more expensive. With the OxyClean, you just take a scoop in this little scoop right here, fill it up with some hot water, give it a good scrub with a sponge or a washcloth, and the big thing you want to do is rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse. You want to rinse as much as you can because you don't want any of that OxyClean residue left. So now that we have all of our stuff cleaned and thoroughly rinsed, we're going to start sanitizing it. So this is Star San. You mix 1 ounce of Star San solution with 5 gallons of water to make a sanitizing solution. So we got our sanitizer solution in here, and with Star San there's always a lot of foam that kicks up on it, and that's why people say don't fear the foam, and they'll wrap their beer right onto the foam that's still residing in the bucket after you empty it out. So I'm just going to start throwing some stuff in here, hydrometer, our airlock. Take some of this solution and drain it into a spray bottle, and you could just spray your lid. You could spray other things last minute, or as you go you could just kind of spray along.
Alright, so while we're waiting, it's good to just check and make sure you got all the right ingredients ready for the next steps. So we got our hops. We have 2 different types of hops. We have our yeast for after the cooking process, and we have our malt extract in the sink getting warmed up.
Alright, so we let it steep for about 20 minutes. We just turned off the heat now. We're going to let it sit for another 5 or 10 minutes. And if you look in there, you actually see that it's darker. So it's not just water anymore. It's kind of like we're steeping tea for grain. 10 minutes is up. Let's remove this grain bag. And just let it drain out. You don't want to squeeze it. We're going to add in our first fermentable, which is 6 pounds of Maillard malts, gold malt extract syrup. So this was preheated in the sink, So it should be pretty easy to pour. Just pour that directly in there. So our heat is on. I'm just going to give this a mix, just to mix all that malt extract in there. And you can tell it's mixed because if you pull up too early, you still got a bunch of syrup, caramel stuff kind of dripping off of that. Continue to mix this occasionally until you get up to boiling temperature. Alright, so we just hit boiling temperature, and you want to be very careful here. This is why I'm wearing gloves, because when it starts boiling, you risk boiling over. That's called the hot break. So you got to keep stirring it, and if it looks like it's going to boil over, you can just shut off the heat, or just pull it right off of the burner. Try to stir it, keep those bubbles down, which you can only do so much. You can also spray sanitizer on there. You can see the sanitizer is killing the bubbles.
Alright, let's pop in the hops that we got. We're going to put in our first hops that are going to be in here for 60 minutes.
Yeah, so whenever you're looking at a recipe and you see hops at 60 minutes, that means they're going to go in 60 minutes from the end of the boil. So these are going to be in there for a full hour.
So this is what you want to see for the hour that you're going to be boiling. Just a steady boil with no overflowing. Alright, so we've had our bittering hops in there for 58 minutes. So the last 2 minutes, we're going to put in our aroma hops, which are the Saz hops.
We took our boil kettle off of the stove, turned off the heat. We dumped out our sanitizing liquid out of the fermentation bucket. And before you dump out all of it, you want to make sure you keep some in a little bowl. So this is like our little sanitizing solution here for our airlock and our hydrometer, just to take our gravity reading. We need this temperature of the liquid, which is our wort now, to go down to about 75-80 degrees Fahrenheit. You could just wait for it to go naturally out in the air, but it'll take forever. You can put it in an ice bath, it'll be a little bit faster. Luckily we have a chiller here, which will get it down to temperature in about 20 minutes. Pour this wort into the fermentation bucket. You can see it's still pretty hot. A lot of steam on there. That's all the hops on the bottom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to top off the fermenter. So we only did a partial boil, so we have about 2 gallons of wort. We're going to top it off with an extra 3 gallons to get up to the 5-gallon mark on here. So right now I'm just topping this off with a few gallons of spring water. It's a good idea to chill the spring water in your fridge or your freezer, just so it'll lower the temperature a little bit faster. And it's also okay to kind of pour it in there rough, because we want to aerate the wort so that the yeast will start up faster.
Alright, so while we're waiting for the wort to cool down, we need to rehydrate the yeast. So we heated up 1 cup of water to about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. You just want to get a little warm when you're going to dump that yeast in there. And just pour the yeast in there to rehydrate it. Now there are kits that do come with liquid yeast, but in this case it's a dry yeast, so you're going to have to put it in with this water. Now once we have all this yeast mixed in and dissolved, we're going to leave it for 10 minutes, and then right when the wort is cooled down to the proper temperature, we're going to go ahead and mix that in.
Alright, so before we pitch our yeast, this is a sanitized hydrometer, and it's just going to show the gravity of the wort. You want to make sure you do it before you put the yeast in. It's nice to give it a little bit of a spin, and then try to get any bubbles off of it.
Alright, so our wort is now at 80 degrees. Our yeast is rehydrated, so we're going to go ahead and pour that in there.
Yeah, so right after you give it a little bit of a swirl, we're going to put on our sanitized lid. We're going to put in our sanitized airlock. Notice there's a little bit of sanitizer fluid in there, so we can see when it starts fermenting, we're going to see some bubbles going through it.
Yeah, within the first week, you're going to start seeing CO2 escape from the fermentation bucket, and you'll see bubbles start to come up through these 2 water compartments.
If you take a tennis ball, you could put it under the bucket and roll the bucket around a little bit on there. And it's just a good way to kind of aerate the wort as well as mix in the yeast. And now we'll just put this in a cooler, dry place and let it sit there for a couple weeks.